Hello everyone, welcome back to Jake's Scary Unusual. In today's story, we're going to be going over a story taking place in West Virginia. It's a unique story that's definitely going to be of intrigue. You will see why. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe, and share on social media if you like. Enjoy, sit back, relax, and I'll see you at the end. It was the year 1984, and David and Sarah were going to middle school. As they were going through their hallway in the middle school, they felt a really odd feeling. They actually weren't really sure what to make of it. There was just kind of like this gust of wind, and everything kind of changed. The whole atmosphere of the school and everything. And it's weird because they were going from class to class. Everyone else already made it. They just happened to be last, and that's what makes it really eerie, is because this gust of wind was really cold, like more oddly cold than normal. It's like someone left the back door open in the school. Mind you, it was an average size American middle school. And as they were walking down the hall, they just can't help to think, like, okay, is someone in here? Is someone doing something, pranking a teacher or something? We were not allowed to leave the doors open. So they go down to the back door and they saw there's these mud prints on the ground right where the back door is. And they're just really confused at this point. Now, mind you, they're brother and sister. They always hang out together. Really good friends as brother and sister. Good relationship. Everything's great. So they always go investigate things together. But they're about to be late to their next class. So they're looking at the ground and they're looking at the mud tracks. They're like, these are really weird. There's 6 like toe marks in each one of these mud tracks. And they couldn't really make out what it was or what type of creature it actually could have been. So they turn around and, unfortunately at the time, they didn't have cell phones, not really great portable cameras or anything like that. So they went back, they actually went to their class, they were going to science class. And it was around the afternoon at this time. It was like their second to last class. They go in, and they're just kind of sitting there. They were actually science class partners as well. And they're thinking to themselves, should we tell the teacher what we just saw out in the hall? Or worst comes the worst, the teacher's going to yell at us for actually leaving the area we should have been in. Because you really should just go to your next class. You really shouldn't go near the doors or anything like that, because security and stuff like that. But, a different time anyway, it was the 80s. So, but, they're working on their science projects and even starting to like get to the point where the teacher's going to start talking about homework. And it just couldn't leave their mind. It wouldn't leave their mind. As class finishes up, the brother, he goes over to the teacher and like, hey, don't be mad at me, but I saw some really weird tracks by the back door of the school. And she just gives him this really weird look. She's like, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, you want to see? And she's just looking at him like, what makes you think these tracks are even here still? And so David and his sister Sarah are kind of just looking at each other like, okay, you know what? We're going to take the risk. Let's go show her. So class gets dismissed and they wait till all the kids leave. And as they're walking out, they take the science teacher down. The door's closed. And to their belief, the marks on the ground are gone. And they were actually pretty frustrated at this point because it's like, okay, did the janitor just do this? Like, we wish we had a camera. We could have took pictures. And the teacher's like, I want to believe you guys, but you guys have no proof. And, even if the janitor did come and clean it up, you think we would have been told that there was potentially something in here, some type of animal that wasn't supposed to be in the school. But no one did. They didn't make any announcements. So they were really puzzled at this point. So they're going on to their next class. They actually happen to pass the janitor's room, and they go in and they're like, hey, did you clean up some mud by the back door before? And he just looks at them and says, yeah, why? Did you notice anything weird? David says. The janitor says, hmm, not really, but now that I think about it, the tracks did look a little weird. And David goes, so they were tracks. And he kind of just looks a little bleak. Like something's overtaking him right now. He didn't feel too comfortable about that whole conversation. And Sarah's kind of getting nervous at this point. And David goes, well, we have to get to our next class now. Well, thank you. And he just kind of looks at him and gives this weird stare, even a glare in a sense, as they're walking by the janitor's office. So they go down their next class. This is the last class of the day, and they're just kind of sitting in there. Now more puzzled, like, okay, is this a cover up? Do they know about this creature? Does it live in the school's basement? What's actually going on here? So, as the last class finishes up, it's actually math. They have math at the end of the day. Not my favorite class, but I mean, hey. And so they finish up, they leave the school, they start walking home, and it's about a mile and a half for them because they didn't need a bus. It wasn't that far. Actually, it was a more rural area. So, they didn't really have a need for buses. Of course, it depends on the school district and everything else, but they just decided to walk. They didn't like the crowdedness on the buses and stuff. They weren't super social. That's why they hang out all the time, because they're kind of both very similar in a lot of those ways. So they're walking home. It's just real long stretch of road, and it's mostly uphill. So as they come to school, they have to go down this long hill, Sarah and David. But actually on the way home, they have to go up. It was around 3:30 at the time, and it started to storm. And they're walking up this hill, and they just can't help but feel really uncomfortable and uneasy, like something's watching them as they walk up this hill. It didn't make much sense to them at the time, but shortly after that, they both look up on top of this hill off to the left, and they see this thing kind of hunched over, staring at them, like the head's like this, and its body's like all like packed up like that. And they weren't make of this thing. It was just a really off-putting feeling. And they're making their way up this hill more, and it starts pouring more. I mean, this rain is really coming down at this point. I mean, it's storming. It's starting to flash flood in the area they're walking up of this hill. And they keep watching this thing, but they're not realizing this water's coming down more. And as they're looking at this thing, there's a landslide coming down towards them. So it was kind of like this, and it comes down the road. And as they're looking, they could feel it, and they look down, and their feet are covered in mud, and they see rocks and boulders coming at them. Like, we need to move. We need to get out of this area, like, really quick. This isn't going to be good if we stay here. So they have to get on the other side of the guard railing, as this mud is rushing down the road. I mean, they can't be in this place anymore. They have to move. This isn't good for them. So they're moving up the guardrail, and they're getting past the landslide. But these boulders and rocks are coming down even harder now. And actually a boulder, as David's going, it goes right through the guardrail, and he's freaked. I mean, he stopped right where he is. He's like, I don't want to go anymore. I'm frozen. And, Sarah's kind of talking to him like, hey, we need to keep moving. We can't actually stay here. This isn't good. I mean, think about it. There's more boulders that can come down, or that thing that's watching us, we don't even know what it is. So David slowly makes his way around this guardrail, and it's actually kind of like a landslide. It's like a mudslide going down at this point on this part of the road, right where it broke through. So he's holding on, and he actually jumps to the other side. And Sarah's looking at him, and she's like, okay, you need to catch me, or I'm going to be taken down off the right side of the cliff of this road. And he wasn't going to have that. So he actually found, there's some rope a little bit up the road. He actually grabbed it because the other day someone was having some issues with the car, and they just happened to leave rope there, as they were rummaging through the luggage department of their car. So he grabs the rope, he throws it across, she actually ties it onto the unbroken part of the guardrail, and she uses it, she jumps, and she's holding onto the rope, and David's holding onto it the other side. So she makes it across, thankfully. and David grabs her as she's coming across this mudslide. And so they get past that point, and just as they felt comfortable, they looked off to the left, back up that hill again, and it's gone. That creature is gone. It's like, where'd it go? And they weren't really sure at this point where this thing went, or maybe did we just see that? Was that actually there? So they're almost at the top of the hill at this point. They're a little over a mile, and they're feeling pretty good because they know they only have about a half a mile left till they're home. So they continue to make their way up the hill. And as they make their way up, the rain starts, clearing out. They can see the sun coming through. Little did they know, as they got to the top of the hill, this thing runs. I mean, it runs. It bolts across the road right in front of them. Like it wasn't even phased that they were there. And they saw it. It was this black, mangly looking creature. It had really strange, like, it was like red in the face a little bit, but it had a lot of hair. And it had horns, kind of like all over its body. But it was like shaggy black hair, and even skin was black. It was really weird that the way this creature kind of kept itself. And what they stated, it was over like 7 feet tall. It's really big feet. And yes, it did have 6 toes and 6 fingers. So they were kind of in shock and awe seeing this thing. And it runs across and jumps off the cliff. But they actually run up to the side. They're also very nervous and like shaken by this thing, but they're also like intrigued. Like, I want to see what happened to this. We might not ever see this thing again. They look off to the side as this thing jumps down, and it's actually sliding down the side of the mountain. This is about 110 feet drop, but it's at a slide enough that something that big might be able to slide. This thing was really muscular too. I think it was able to like kind of take the force. So it's making its way down, and they're like, okay, I want to get home at this point. I saw what I wanted to see, and we're done. We're done here. We're moving along. So they both make their way up, and they eventually get to their house. The rain stops, the sun's out, clouds are mostly gone. Great time at that point, but now they had to deal with this road being partially collapsed and the guardrail being out. Going to school is not going to be that viable this way anymore. So now they're going to have to find a new way to get to the school. So they get into their house, and mother and father are home. They just got home from work. And David and Sarah's like, hey, we just saw this creature run across the road, and we think it was in our school. And the parents just look at them like, what are you talking about? We had a stressful day, and we're not really ready for these games right now. We don't want to hear this. And the David and Sarah are just like, okay, this is not great because, I mean, look how our parents are acting. I mean, this is not the response we needed or wanted at the time. So they wait a couple hours till dinner time, and actually they're feeling pretty good at this point. The parents are laughing. You can tell they come down from work. It's around 6:30 at this point. And so David starts and says, hey, I see this thing. On the top of the mountain. I was coming home with Sarah and also seen tracks in the school. And so the parents are kind of just looking at each other and like, okay, we didn't think we'd ever have to tell you this, but we seen something too. And Sarah and David are like kind of in shock. And the dad goes, okay, son, you came and told me it first. So I'm going to tell you this. When I was your age too, I seen a creature coming out of that same area of the woods. Because we lived in this house too when we were young. And David's kind of just getting the chills at this point, and Sarah's like acting very nervous. Like she was really uncomfortable. And their mother is looking at the father like, okay, you're kind of weirding me out, and now you're creeping me out because you just told them you saw it too. And you even saw it when you were a kid. So, okay, now it's like, okay, this thing's actually potentially real, and it's very old because it doesn't seem to have anything related to age too much. And David starts going on talking about its height, what it looks like. And just as he was talking about its looks, the father just turns pale white, like he saw something, like a ghost. And father just stops, like, wait, it looked like that. Did it have 6 toes and 6 fingers? And then David's like, yeah, it did. The father just gets sick. He stops eating his dinner, puts his napkin down, and said, I have to show you something in the garage. So they all get done with dinner, clean up, they go out to the garage, and David's father pulls out this book. It has pictures in it. There's this one picture at their local fairgrounds in West Virginia, in this small town, of all these people gathered together. But in the back, in the far back, you can see this creature, like very faintly, but you can tell it's the thing that David and Sarah was describing. And that really sent chills down all their spines, and really just everything changed at that point. That was confirming that this existed. And not only the father saw it, and David and Sarah saw it, but now there was mud in the school that was cleaned up, obviously, but the janitor even saw it, and he was kind of spooked out. I also kind of feel like he was hiding it a little bit. But, it comes to the conclusion that this thing actually exists. And it's a harsh reality for all of them to kind of swallow at this point. And, they're not really sure what to do. But there hasn't been any really strange or unfamiliar deaths in the area. So it kind of gets them all wondering, like, okay, what is this creature here for? What does it hunt? What does it do? And why is it here? It didn't really seem to disturb anyone. It kind of just seems to spook you out and then runs away. So this creature in question, who knows what it is, considering that they have a picture of it, it's hard to make out because it's an older picture, because it was when the father was a kid. But it's just this feeling that they're getting. It just something feels wrong. Something feels off about this whole situation. So they put the book away as they're getting to bed. They were like, this is great. We figured out that, it actually does exist. We can't tell anyone, though, because they'll think we're nuts. We can't say we've seen this creature. Yes, it's West Virginia. Cryptids are a thing. But, it's just kind of, it's like you need more proof. They were the type of family that really keep to themselves. Not really branch out too much. They like keeping their own and keeping to their own. So they all get ready for bed. And as David and Sarah's getting in their beds, they're separate rooms, second floor, and David's brushing his teeth, and he hears this clicking sound on the window. And he looks off to the right, and he sees this hand. It's hard to make out what it looks like. It was so dark outside. There wasn't a moon that night. And he's looking out, and he sees this hand, and it's pulling up the window, and David screams. As David screams, Sarah and the parents come rushing to the bathroom, and they realize the window's open, but there's nothing there. And David says to his dad, he's like, it was there. I saw it. I saw the black hand. It was reaching in to the bathroom as I was brushing my teeth. So the father gets serious at this point. Okay, this thing is clearly trying to hunt us or something. We don't know if this thing actually did do damage in the past. So he goes around, locks all the windows in the house and the doors. He actually has a shotgun in his room. So he holds it at night. And he says to David and Sarah, don't come out of your rooms. All the windows are locked, and lock your doors. If you have any issues, you scream, or you say the code word I told you to say, which was run, and you say it 3 times. I'm going to hear you at that point and wake up. So they're all sleeping at this point. And in the middle of the night, yet again, by David's window, he hears this kind of scratching in the glass, and he hears this heavy, like at the window, and you can see the mist and the fog getting on the window and just fogging everything up. And David's like, okay, this is not good. What the hell is going on here? He screams, run, run, run. 2 seconds later, his dad comes and says to David, unlock the door now. As he gets up to unlock the door, this thing smashes its hand through, rips open the window with brute force, jumps in, and lunges at David. And as this thing lunges at David, he gets the door open, opens it, and he sees it. It's about to attack him. He jumps out of the way. The father puts the shotgun up, fires, and it's a pump action Remington. He fires not one, he pumps not 2, 3, 4, 5, fires 6 shells in this thing, and it just falls straight back. As it falls back, you can hear the sighs and just the grunting of this thing. You can hear it still breathing heavy. It falls down, smashes through the floor, and there's blood everywhere, and it's leaking everywhere. This thing is gnarly. It's disgusting. And it falls through, and it has this horrid odor, especially as you pump shells through it. It falls, smashes down onto the kitchen table, and just lies there. And they're looking at it through the floor. And now, mind you, they couldn't see too well because it was pitch black outside, no moon that night, and the lights were off. David's father's completely freaking scared at this point. Like, what the hell did I just shoot, and what's going on here? I knew this thing was going to come at some point. I didn't know what was going to happen, though, he says. He says to David, look, go get your sister now. Stay in her room. Lock the door. I'm going downstairs. And he says that to the mother, too. Like, do not come out of your room. This is nothing to be messed with. So the father goes downstairs. As he goes downstairs, he has the shotgun up. He actually reloaded at that point. And he turns the light on, and there it is. It's on the kitchen table. Mind you, the kitchen table is flattened at this point completely. So he's like, okay, all right, it's down. It's clearly, you can see it. Its blood's like more black. It was like maybe a higher rich oxygen or some type of weird chemical combination this thing had in its body. And so he goes and calls the police. And this smell in this house is so bad. I mean, it's actually like kind of bubbling a little bit on the wood, but the wood itself isn't deteriorating, but the blood is. It's like, okay, what's going on? Is it the composition of the air kind of making the blood boil? We don't know, and that's the weird stuff about this thing. And it was obviously a cryptid. So he calls the police. The police come, and they're coming in, and they're like, "What is that smell?" And he says, "Look, don't be alarmed, but." The whole story is about cryptids. We have them in West Virginia. And they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. They go in the kitchen, and they are so shocked. The one officer actually pissed his pants. I know it sounds horrible, but he literally pissed his pants. He was so scared and so like distressed. And the other officer's like, we need to call the FBI immediately. And I have a few other numbers I need to call. So they call up all these people. The officer says on the phone, we have a cryptid, and we have a problem. And the FBI agent goes, I got that. What's the problem? He says, it has that blood. And he's like, understood. So this was a different level at this point. So he puts the phone down. He says, you're going to have to evacuate you and your family. This house is now condemned. You cannot be in here anymore. You being in here now is even unsafe. And he's like, why? This blood is highly contaminated with uranium. And it's chemical compounds. And he's like, okay, are we going to be okay? He's like, you're going to have to go to the hospital and get checked out. The father goes up and knocks on the door, and Sarah opens it, and she says, is everything okay? And he's like, yes, honey, the thing is dead, but we need to go to the hospital. We need to get checked out. And Sarah and David are like, this is crazy, and they're nervous. They're like, okay, are we going to be okay? And he yells for his wife. Wife comes out. Father gives her a big hug and said, honey, it's okay. Gives her a kiss on the forehead and says, we need to go to the hospital, though, now. And she's really spooked out. But they all go downstairs. The FBI pulls up. Chemical contamination teams pull up. So they leave. They go to the hospital, get checked. Surprisingly, none of them have radiation poisoning. But there's FBI agents coming in, and they're like, hey, what you saw tonight needs to stay between us and you you can't say anything. This is never to be public information. Do you understand? It will be used against you in court, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that this information doesn't get out. Do you understand that? And they were really spooked out the way it was, that they had to deal with this creature, and now they're getting threatened. So they're like, yep, we understand. We're not dealing with it anymore. We get it. So they shook hands on it, and they discussed the future options. And they actually said, hey, we're going to have to put you in a safe house now with you and your family. You're going to have to change names. This is a big deal. You need to understand how serious this actually is. So they actually ended up going to a safe house in actually a different state. It was actually down in Texas. They made a move all the way down to Texas because this whole situation was so serious, and how everything was taken was so serious that they had to move. It was an epic thing. It was absolutely insane. So they move down there. They never see this cryptid again. They never hear about it. It's never on the news, you know. But they can remember still to this day that this thing was haunting them. They kept waking up and having nightmares constantly and night terrors and seeing this thing. They had to get therapy for years. It was actually paid for by the government. There's this whole system for cryptid networks and traumatized people that go through these, is it secret projects or just seeing these creatures? They have to protect these people because if this information gets out, then it's over. It's over for them and it's over for the secrets of the government. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was definitely a unique cryptid West Virginia story. If you liked the video, please like, share it on social media, and please subscribe. I appreciate all your support. And thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great night and a great day. Bye now.